What's up guys, Doug Polk here, and today we're going to talk about what it takes to win your first $1 million playing poker. And look, I'm not just some guy on the internet telling you what to do. I actually lived this. I started poker with $10 or $20 with an online deposit, and I've turned it into everything I have today. So I feel like I'm well qualified to teach you what goes into trying to become a great player, which is what it's going to take nowadays, guys. Look, obviously as poker moves along, it gets tougher to be great. It gets tougher to make money because the tools available for people to improve at the game get better and stronger, and people try harder. So it's not nearly as easy today than it was way back in the day to make a lot of money playing poker. That's just simply a reality you have to accept. I know it seems easy when you see someone win a tournament or play high stakes or make a big hero call or run a cool bluff, but the reality is that those players probably worked very hard to get there. And if they didn't, that road would be tougher for you today than it was when they came up. I was looking through my YouTube channel and realized it was 9 years ago I started my $100 bankroll challenge, where I tried to show you could turn $100 into $10,000 on WSOP.com. And ultimately I did make it, although it took a little while to get there. The point remains that the dream was alive and well at that point. However, today, it's even tougher than it was back then with the prevalence of online solvers and training tools and all of these ways you can improve your game. It's definitely a more competitive landscape. But I'm not going to leave you high and dry here. I'm going to go through exactly what it takes to win $1 million playing poker, starting right now if you were totally new to the game. Kicking it off with step number 1, picking your game type. Before you've even played one hand of poker or decided to study anything, you need to know what game you're going to try and lock in on. Now, historically, I've always recommended people try and pursue the game they feel most passionate about, because if you love the game type you're playing, well, then you'll probably do the best that you can there. However, nowadays, I think it's more important to try and pick something that's more realistic for your long-term success, which is why I would, generally speaking, prioritize online poker over live poker if you're trying to go on this journey, because simply put, you can play much smaller stakes and get a better learning environment at a cheaper price point than if you play live poker. Now, if you're bankrolled for both, I think live poker is certainly softer, but we're talking about what goes into becoming a great player to winning a lot of money, and I would say you want to pick the online formats. I would also, generally speaking, say you should probably lean towards cash games over tournaments. You can go either way, right? Both of them can make some sense, but the thing is, if we zoom out and we think long term, if one day you're trying to play tournaments for a living, that's going to involve a lot of traveling around different cities, different countries, hotel fees, flights, rides, meals, all of this stuff that goes into having to travel around playing in different tournaments in different places. And those expenses certainly add up. I also think there is a lifestyle consideration where when you're playing tournaments, you're always sort of, at the mercy of the event itself, whereas in cash games, you're not. So you still can do tournaments, but you have to try and visualize the way this is going to play out for you. And if you're going to travel the tournament scene trying to play higher stakes tournaments, you're going to end up spending a lot of money just moving around from place to place. So realistically, your best bet is going to be 6 max or 8 max or full ring cash games online. And from that perspective, we should be trying to learn how to play no limit. This brings us to step 2. Before you even play one hand, before you look at one trainer solution, anything you might do, start to familiarize yourself with how the game is played. And the way that you do that is by watching top players. I cannot stress this enough. It has never been easier to log on to the internet and see what top players are doing. You can pull up online poker sites. You can watch poker streams. You can see poker on YouTube. You can see poker is going on everywhere all the time. So start to watch what people in the formats that you want to play and how they play. And most specifically, watch the best players and start to see the things that they do. When they raise, what size do they raise to? When they bet the flop, what sizes do they bet on different boards? How often does it seem like they're betting in certain situations? When do they overbet? All of these kinds of things you can start to learn and improve on before you're even really getting deep into the weeds on learning the game. You'll start to see how it functions, and that functionality, the way that you approach that game, will help guide your learning process as you improve. So we've picked our game and we're watching some of the top players play, and we're starting to familiarize ourselves with that, and that brings us to step 3. Step 3, get in there and start playing some poker. No, unfortunately, that's actually not the solution. It's going to be a while before you play poker. You know what? This is crazy. You guys might think this is nuts, but I think it should actually be likely months before you even play your first hand of poker. And again, I cannot stress this enough. You are not just going to walk into poker and be God's gift to the game and start crushing. And the reason is because poker is so much memorizing knowledge and heuristics and applying them in real time that you learn. And that's not something you can fake. You're not going to intuitively know where you'd bet 10% pot, 25% pot, half pot, 2/3 pot, overbet. These are things that might make sense once you learn about them, but no one sits down and knows those kinds of concepts. They're going to have to learn it by practicing and studying. So I think you can even just get it out of your head. You're even going to be playing poker for quite some time when you start. You want to be able to play at a really, really high level, because let's just take a step back. If you're going to go into a competitive landscape and be great, which is what it's going to take now to win this much money playing poker, you have to be truly excellent at the format. And that's not going to happen by just getting out there and playing some hands. It's not about just learning on the fly, watching stuff or seeing one hand from a good player. You're going to have to learn how to play with your entire range in all sorts of situations and how to execute that with a high accuracy, or you're simply not going to be a very great player. Again, you need to be great to win this much money playing poker. And the other thing to think about is lessons you learn this early, you take with you for your entire poker career. So fixing a mistake you might have for a long time in month 2 before you even played poker is extremely valuable, and that's something you should not be passing up on. There are many different software trainers out there you can use to improve. Obviously, I would recommend Lucid Poker, as I'm one of the owners of that company, and our training tool is totally free for you to get in there and start playing now at lucidpoker.com. But there are tons of other ones out there that are great that you can use to improve your game. So you want to make sure you're finding somewhere to learn, practice, and study to understand the way that the solver plays spots. I don't want to spend a ton of time on GTO versus exploitative play because that subject's been beaten to death, but I will just touch on it briefly. Even if you're someone that thinks you're going to deviate from theoretical baseline quite often, you need that baseline to know what you're deviating from, right? What am I supposed to do? Okay, now I think these things about my opponent. How can I change it? If you don't have that solid baseline, then really you're not able to adjust correctly anyway. So whether you want to play highly exploitative or highly theoretical, that strong baseline, that fundamental ability to play at a high level will be extremely useful to you in either approach. So regardless of your take on GTO versus exploit, having that strong baseline will be important and profitable, and honestly in today's day and age, essential to succeeding at a high stakes level. This brings us now to step 4. We're going to use our training tools to slowly improve over time by seeing our accuracy increase. So as you use training tools, they will tell you how accurate you were or how close to the answer you were, or even if you want to take a solution and look it up yourself, you're going to pop quiz yourself. You're going to train yourself to get a higher and higher and higher and higher accuracy. And as you see that accuracy increase over time, you're going to know that you're getting better and better and better at the game because there's mathematical evidence that you are, and you know that what you're learning is actually getting put into practice at the tables. When I prepared for my high stakes match versus Daniel Negreanu several years ago, I spent an ungodly number of hours just grinding over and over and over and over and over all of the same situations to make sure my accuracy was extremely high for all the different hands I could have. So I knew I would play at a high level in real time when I actually play, because it's one thing to know all this stuff, but if you can't take it and then put it into practice while you're playing for significant stakes or in a high pressure spot, it doesn't really help you. You have to be able to execute this knowledge that you're learning and know that you're actually using it, right? It's again, one thing to know a concept. It's another thing to be able to execute that concept in real time while you're playing a game. This brings us to step number 5. And these first few steps should have taken you probably at least a month or 2 or 3. Now they're on step number 5. We're going to play very short poker sessions. Okay, you're finally going to play in this game that you like, you're learning, you're getting good at. You're going to play very short sessions. And the reason that it's important to play short sessions is so you can take notes, jot hands down, and then close the client, leave the table, wherever you're at, and then learn and study them. What did I do right in this spot? What did I do wrong in this spot? Did I use the right size? Did I use the right hand? Was I supposed to check a lot more than I thought? Was I supposed to bet a lot more than I thought? Was I supposed to raise a lot more than I thought? Just play very, very brief stints, write the hands down, put notes underneath of what you're interested in, and then cross-check that versus the solutions to know how you're doing in real time in an actual game, but the learning concepts will be the same as what you were putting into practice versus the trainer. One super important note here, your goal is not to win money. Of course, you're playing poker, you should be trying to win money, but whether you win or lose here, it doesn't really matter. What you're doing is you're building in a disciplined habit of how you approach learning and improving, so that as you get better and as you move up in stakes and as you're playing in more competitive environments, you are bringing that same level of discipline with you. You are just trying to execute the correct strategy and learn where your flaws are. You're not worried about trying to put dollars in your bank account. It's going to take you years probably to get to a level where you're making this kind of money that you want to be making playing poker. This brings us to number 6, log every single session results. This is a kind of simple one. You probably would know this intuitively, but it is funny to me how often people will say, oh, well, like I'm winning or losing. And then you ask, well, do you track your records? And they go, oh, no, but I kind of know, or you really don't know. Track every session, track every hour. So you know your hourly, you know your big blind win rate, you know how much money you're up, how much money you're down, your swings, your deviations. All of these things are important for you to be able to then look back on and know how you're doing and gauge your progress. So it's absolutely essential. No serious poker player doesn't track their results. You absolutely have to do so, and that will be expected of you, not just by the government for tax purposes, but also for you to know how good you're doing. My 7th step here would be to find a group of like-minded people that are trying to learn and improve. You can find a bigger group like the Upswing Lab, or you can find a smaller group of close friends, but find some kind of community where you can talk hands back and forth and listen to what other people have to say. And I think there's a key way to approach this when you're listening, because I feel like a lot of times when people ask other people questions, they're kind of just looking for an answer. When you ask a question, ask something you're really trying to solve for, and then when you hear a response, think critically about that response and gauge it. So try to imagine that you didn't play the hand, but Frank played the hand. What should Frank do? And then take your own individual bias out of the hand and look at it from a third-party perspective. And then when you get that feedback, try to judge if it's good or bad feedback, or how good or how bad, based on the quality of that answer, not who it is, or whether you like it or not, or whatever it might be. Because sometimes very bad players can have great wisdom in an individual spot, and then sometimes really good players can say things that are wrong. So I would say don't be critical of people or judgmental about their thoughts and advice, because you want to keep a good feedback loop going. But internally recognize, like, okay, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense, this makes sense, that's good logic, and try and find a good logic flow where this leads to this, and then try and have that core thinking down, right? And I didn't talk about this earlier, but it's worth mentioning here. Good players are machine-like, where it's like this, then this, then this, then this, then this. So it'll be like this size, this is the counter to that, and then this is the counter to that, and then these hands are in this range, and then this hand is within that range, this frequency, and they get so used to going down the list. You want to just drill that to a point where it's just like automatic to boom, 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 boom. And then the consistency is what's going to make you great. I would way rather have a simpler strategy that I can execute extremely consistently that is balanced than a super complicated, beautiful strategy that I just mess up a lot, right? We want consistency and balance. But back to the study group, find these people and try and build a group of people that you respect, or at least feel like you're like close to, right? Maybe you could be a bit above, but below, whatever it is, where you can bounce these ideas back and forth and try and find positive people. There can be a lot of toxic people in poker in general. Obviously, poker is gambling, so you're going to have some negative people that are in it for the wrong reasons or that have the wrong mental approach. But find a good core group of people and use that as your base, and always try to like grow that over time as you move up in stakes, or find people that maybe are more intellectual, or can maybe help you both improve along the way. Number 8, we're trying to get more into playing poker. At this point, you should be playing more frequently and playing more sessions. You're logging them, you're talking hands. And as you're going through, you're trying to look at your results and gauge if you are ready to move up in stakes, right? Whether it's, well, of course, you need to make sure that's financially appropriate for you to do so, but also if you have the track record to show that you deserve it. This is tricky because I always moved up in stakes very aggressively. When I was playing heads up, I moved up super aggressively, actually. And I went through a long period of my life where I didn't move up when I probably should have. I was playing full rings. So to each their own, how aggressive you want to be, but you should be looking for spots to be able to take a shot into a higher game when you have the bankroll to do so, because that's ultimately the long run end goal here. It's not just pounding out $15 an hour at NL10 or NL20. It's finding a way to one day play higher stakes games where your hourly can be extremely good and you can play at a very high level, and then you can balance the study that you need to do with your life and playing poker, and find that kind of conjunction of all those things together, or that intersection of all those things together. So start to find shots where you can move up in stakes, and make sure also when you move up in stakes that you're not changing the framework for what got you to where you are already, even if it's just one stake below. You started NL10, you're NL20. It's the same game. Poker is always the same game. You get the same number of cards. Everything's in big blinds. So bring that same thinking, that same logic that you had when you were studying, when you were training, when you were playing smaller stakes, and then bring that to these bigger games that you play, and take notes and study afterwards in the same way you would for a normal session. This brings us to our 9th step. We're starting to move up in stakes and learn and get better and improve. This is a really important one, guys. You need to maintain a high ratio of study to play, even when you're playing and doing well. I feel like people tend to do this thing where when they're losing, they maybe study more to try and get better, and when they're winning, they don't worry about it. That might work for you when things are going well, but then when things are going poorly, they might be going poorly in part because you weren't spending the time needed for things to be going well more often, right? When you're winning, you're trying to like get winner's tilt. You think everything will work. You think you're fine. But the reality is any day you're not studying and improving, you are slowly falling a little bit behind some of your competition. So I would recommend to always have at least a 1-to-1 or maybe 1-to-2 training to playing ratio. I also recognize it might not be realistic to always go 1-to-1. And at some point, if you're a professional, of course, you need to play to make money. But you need to have a high percentage of your time, whether it's 30% to 50%, still studying, still learning, still trying to improve, finding new spots, exploring areas of the game that you're less familiar with. And that kind of dedication to learning is what's going to make you a very difficult person to play against, because you're always improving and getting better. You're not just staying the same, right? I'm sure you see players where you're like, that guy's in the same thing for years and I know exactly what to do versus him. Okay, well, what if that guy instead was just every day changing and learning and evolving? That's much scarier to play against, and that's the kind of guy you want to be. This brings us to our final step. And this one, there's no way around. Time. It's going to take time. No matter how many hours of studying and playing you put in, you will need lots of time of practicing and training and getting better and playing smaller and moving up. It will take you a long time to make good money playing poker. Maybe. Possibly. There's always a chance that you run hot in a situation and win a bunch of money at once. But the reality is it's going to take you a long time. I mean, for me, it took me years to get to my first million. I mean, it took me let me think about this. I had my first million in probably 2010 or 11. And I started poker in 2006 or 7. So it took me 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And poker was easier then, right? So it might take you 10 years. It might take you 15 years. It might take you, who knows? The point is you have to just be committed to the process and recognize that the process plus time equals the results. You can't force it. You can't try and make it happen now or immediately. And feeling a pressure to do so, that will make you play even worse, and you don't want to be doing that. So there you have it, my 10 steps to winning $1 million playing poker. And look, there's never been a better time to join Lucid Poker for free at lucidpoker.com and start training right now, because then you can be talented before you get into the game and not struggling to learn while you're at the table. Thanks, guys. I'll see you again soon.